My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm 43, and the day my father called me a glorified security guard in front of 300 wedding guests was the day I decided he'd learn exactly who his daughter had become. I stood at the back of the ballroom in my simple black dress, watching my golden boy brother Daniel dance with his new wife, while Dad regaled the head table with stories of his successful son and his other daughter who couldn't even finish college. The crystal chandeliers cast everything in warm light, but I felt cold watching this performance I'd seen my entire life. 24 years in the DEA, and my father still introduced me as Becca. She works for the government, with the same tone he'd used to describe someone who collected parking tickets. I hadn't planned to come tonight. 3 days ago, I was in Bogotá, coordinating the largest cartel takedown in DEA history. Operation Silent Thunder had been 18 months in the making, and as the lead agent, I'd lived and breathed nothing else. The timing couldn't have been worse. Daniel's wedding was scheduled for the same weekend as our final raids, but my supervisor, Director Martinez, had pulled me aside after the last arrest. Hayes, he'd said, you've been living in safe houses and running on caffeine for 2 years. Take the weekend. Go to your brother's wedding. That's an order. So here I was, watching Dad work the crowd like the small-town insurance salesman he'd always been, spinning yarns about Daniel's promotion to regional manager like he'd just been elected president. And my boy Daniel, Dad's voice carried across the dance floor, he's making 6 figures now, got himself a corner office, company car, everything I'd dreamed of for my kids. He paused, his smile faltering slightly as his eyes found mine across the room. Course, my daughter Rebecca, well, she tried college, but it didn't work out. She's got some government job now. Security work, I think. Nothing too important. I felt the familiar burn in my chest, the same one I'd carried since I was 12, and he told the neighbors I was the artistic one, while Daniel was the smart one. The same burn from high school graduation, when he'd bragged about Daniel's football scholarship, while barely mentioning my acceptance to Georgetown. The same burn from every family gathering, where my military service was dismissed as playing soldier, and my federal law enforcement career was reduced to some desk job in Washington. My phone buzzed, a text from Martinez. Hayes, turn on Channel 7 News now. I slipped out of the ballroom into the hotel lobby, where a large TV was mounted above the bar. The news anchor's face was serious as footage of arrested cartel members flashed across the screen. In what officials are calling the most successful anti-narcotics operation in decades, the DEA has dismantled the notorious Santos cartel, seizing over $2 billion in drugs and assets. Leading the operation was Special Agent in Charge Rebecca Hayes, a 24-year veteran whose innovative intelligence techniques cracked what many considered an untouchable organization. My photo flashed on screen, an official DEA headshot where I looked nothing like the woman in the simple black dress hiding in a hotel lobby. Agent Hayes, who holds the rank of Special Agent in Charge for South American operations, has been credited with revolutionizing how federal agencies approach international cartel investigations. Sources say she'll likely be nominated for the administrator position when Director Martinez retires next year. I stared at the screen, feeling disconnected from my own image. Special Agent in Charge Rebecca Hayes looked confident, authoritative, someone who commanded rooms full of federal agents and made decisions that affected national security. She looked nothing like Becca, who works for the government. Rebecca, I turned to find my Aunt Carol approaching, wine glass in hand. Honey, what are you doing out here? You're missing the party, just getting some air. She followed my gaze to the TV, where they were now showing aerial footage of the raids. Awful, isn't it? All this drug violence. Thank goodness you've got a safe government job, not like those poor agents who have to deal with that mess. I almost laughed. If she only knew that 3 days ago, I was rappelling from a helicopter into a compound in the Colombian jungle. Come on, Carol linked her arm through mine. Your father's about to give a toast. You know how he gets when he's had a few drinks. He'll probably tell everyone about the time Daniel won that little league championship again. We walked back into the ballroom just as Dad was tapping his champagne flute with a knife. The crowd quieted, all eyes turning to the small man in the ill-fitting tuxedo who somehow commanded attention through sheer determination. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad began, his voice carrying that familiar boom I remembered from childhood. I want to talk about success tonight, about what it means to make something of yourself. Here we go, I thought. My son Daniel here, he gestured broadly toward the head table. He's everything a father could want. Football star in high school, graduated college with honors, worked his way up at the company. He's got the house, the car, the beautiful wife. He's what we call a success story. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Daniel raised his glass, beaming. Now, I love both my children, Dad continued, and I felt my stomach tight. But sometimes you've got to be honest about these things. My daughter Rebecca, she's had a different path. Dropped out of college, couldn't settle down, never gave me grandkids. She works for the government now, security guard or something similar. Nothing wrong with that kind of work, mind you, but it's not exactly what you dream of for your little girl. The words hit like physical blows. Around me, I could feel people's eyes, some sympathetic, others uncomfortable. A few guests had their phones out, still scrolling through news about the cartel raids, completely unaware that the woman being dismissed on stage was the same one being hailed as a hero on their screens. The point is, Dad continued, oblivious to the irony, success comes from dedication, from making the right choices from Dad. The word came out louder than I'd intended. The entire ballroom turned to look at me, standing at the back in my simple black dress. Dad's face registered surprise, then mild annoyance at being interrupted. Rebecca, honey, I'm giving a toast. I need to correct something, I said, walking slowly toward the front of the room. My voice carried clearly in the sudden silence. You said I dropped out of college. Dad's smile was strained. Well, yes, you left Georgetown after that first year. I left Georgetown after my freshman year to attend the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, I said, still walking. I was recruited by the DEA. A murmur went through the crowd. Dad's confident expression flickered. You said I'm a security guard, I continued, now halfway to the front of the room. I'm actually a special agent in charge for the Drug Enforcement Administration. I've been with the agency for 24 years. The murmur grew louder. Someone at a table near the front was staring at their phone, then at me, then back at their phone. You said I never settled down, I said, stopping directly in front of the head table. Last month, I was awarded the Administrator's Award for Excellence, the highest honor the DEA can bestow. This week, I led the operation that took down the Santos cartel, the largest drug bust in federal history. The room was dead silent now. Dad's face had gone white. Holy shit, someone whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. She's on the news right now. Phones came out across the room as guests frantically searched for the story. I heard gasps, saw faces turning from their screens to me and back again. Rebecca Hayes, someone read aloud from their phone, Special Agent in Charge, DEA South American Operations, led operation resulting in $2 billion in seized assets and the arrest of 37 cartel members. Dad dropped his champagne flute. The crystal shattered against the marble floor, the sharp sound echoing through the silent ballroom. You said success comes from making the right choices, I said, my voice steady and clear. You're right about that. I chose to serve my country. I chose to spend 2 decades infiltrating drug cartels, building cases against some of the most dangerous people on Earth, protecting American kids from the poison these organizations spread. I chose to put my life on the line, instead of sitting behind a desk selling insurance policies. I looked around the room at 300 faces, staring back at me in shocked silence. I never told you what I really did, because I hoped that someday you'd be proud of me for who I was, not what I accomplished. I thought maybe you'd see that your daughter had value beyond her job title, or her paycheck, or whether she gave you grandchildren. I paused, letting that sink in. I was wrong. The silence stretched on. Dad stood frozen behind his table, mouth slightly open, looking like a man who'd just been told the earth was flat. Daniel found his voice first. Becca, we had no idea. No, I said quietly. You had no idea because you never asked. In 24 years, not one of you ever asked what I actually did for work. You decided I was a failure and built your story around that. I turned back to Dad. You want to talk about success? Tomorrow morning, I'm flying to Washington to brief the Attorney General on this operation. Next month, I'll testify before Congress about cartel infiltration of American cities. The President of the United States knows my name. Dad's face was gray now. Around the room, people were still staring between their phones and me, trying to reconcile the woman in the simple black dress with the federal agent in the news photos. But you know what the real success is? I asked, my voice softening. I sleep well at night. I know that the work I do matters, that I've made a difference. I've saved lives, Dad. I've taken killers off the street and drugs out of schools. I've spent my career serving something bigger than myself. I looked around the room one more time at all these people who'd known me my whole life, but had never really seen me. Daniel, I called to my brother, who was still sitting stunned at the head table. Congratulations on your wedding. I hope you'll be very happy together. I walked toward the exit, the only sound in the room the click of my heels on marble. As I reached the door, I heard Dad's voice, small and broken. Rebecca, wait. I paused but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, he whispered. And for the first time in my life, my father sounded like he meant it. I know, I said, and walked out into the night. In the hotel parking lot, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls from reporters. 43 text messages from colleagues congratulating me on the operation's success, and one from Director Martinez. Hayes, the president wants to meet with you Monday morning. Hope you enjoyed the wedding. I smiled for the first time all day and drove home to the life I'd built, not the one they'd imagined for me, but the one I'd earned.